Hey everybody, can you guys hear me? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me. Yeah, there's a thumbs up. Sweet. Chad, what's up, Chad? Uh, so we're gonna get started here in just a couple minutes. My co-host Logan will be joining while we wait. Where are you guys calling in from? I can go first. I'm from Southern Utah. Detroit. Nice. Hopefully it's not getting too cold over there yet. Mexico, Los Angeles, New York, Austin. Sweet. Wow, we got a couple of folks from India too. Logan's here. What's up, Logan?
Hey, suppose I'll say I'm up in Victoria, Canada, BC, and it is getting chilly up here.
Yeah, I'm in southern Utah, but I'm high elevation. It's starting to get cold next week. We're supposed to be into the low 60s. So, and then last question before we can kind of get this thing going as well. I'm always curious, like the overall AI usage or exposure. I think as of late, then this number keeps going higher and higher. But I don't care what tool you're using, but I'm always curious from just a development standpoint. I'm going to give you a scale from 1 to 5. 1 is if you never or rarely ever use AI for development, and 5 means you're using it every single day. I don't care how proficient you are, but it's just the fact that if you're using it or not. So sweet, we got some fives. This session is traditionally geared more towards the people that are using it more often, so that's completely okay. 3, but I'm manager. I love it, Rick. I love it. Sweet. Got a we got a lot of fives, but quite a few ones and twos. So I'll try not to lose you guys as I'm going through this. We'll give it 1 or 2 minutes before we get started. So if you need to get a drink, go to the restroom real quick, we'll go ahead and do that. And for the new folks just joining in, drop in the chat where you guys are calling in from. Cape Coral, Florida, beautiful down there. New York, Portland, sweet. Philly, cool. All right, so we're 4 after. People that are going to be joining, there's the number's still going up a little bit, but this is kind of the time where we start to have that kind of taper off a little bit. Um, Logan, you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, folks. So, name's Long Prell, Senior Solutions Engineer here at GitHub. I've been here 3.5 years. Before that, been any sort of whatever you want to call platform engineering now, whether that's DevX, DevOps engineer, automation engineer back in the background, and just love everything about DevOps as a whole.
Sweet, and then over to me. So I'm Austin Becker. I'm a solutions engineer, sales engineer here at GitHub. I've been here coming up on 4 years, so just a little bit over 3.5 years. And yeah, my background's primarily in security. I did a little bit of DevOps in as well, but we can go ahead and jump into it. Logan, anything from you before I get started?
Nope, nothing for me. Go ahead.
Cool. And then just to kind of to note, so I will be running the presentation today. We're going to shoot for about 40 to 45 minutes on the presentation side. I hope to leave the last, 10 to 15 minutes just for Q&A. So with that being said, the reason why I have Logan here is to help answer the questions in the chat as we're going through. With a group this size, it's hard to answer everything. So we're going to try to get as many of those questions answered as we can. And if you have a few questions that you want to ask live, I'll answer as many as I can at the end of it. Also, shout out to Shika and Gins. I believe that they're both here as well. Appreciate you guys helping out as well with that. So, but let's go ahead and get started. So agenda, what are we going to be talking about today? And I'm going to move my chat over here to the other window. We're going to be talking about how do we end up where we are. I was literally talking with a customer yesterday about GitHub Copilot, and they didn't even have they weren't even aware that we had agent mode yet. So, and which is surprising, right? We've made a lot of changes over the last year. So I just like to talk about how we got where we are. We're also going to be talking about like what is GitHub Copilot, what's available today. I'll be highlighting some best practices. So where to use Copilot Code Review, how to use Copilot Coding Agent or the software engineering agent. We'll talk a little bit about best practices on how to use those, and then we'll do a demo. And then at the end, I'll leave you with some where's it all going. I also have a call to action. We have GitHub Universe next month, the week of Halloween. So if you guys are interested, virtual passes are free. We'll drop a couple links in the chat for registration there as well. So before jumping into, like what is Copilot, I always like to talk about a little bit about like where we are and the thought process that GitHub has when we're making big product changes and the things that we're working on, right? So if you look at how software development, the change of it over the last 5 years, we're in a new era, right? Whether you want to accept that fact or not. AI is no longer a tool we bolt on, and it's becoming foundational to how we build software. This slide, I really try to just give a reflection of where we were and the direction that the industry really has already moved in. The industry is in this in between of like this old version of AI. If you think like autocomplete, simple task generation, even early chat, and we are really starting to see the future where we're starting to see things that are going to be more integrated and automated with using agents, right? If you attend any AI conference, they're going to say agents about 50 times. But really the goal with these agents is to increase your efficiency or like your circle of influence and allow you to accomplish more than you ever thought you'd be able to, right? Adopting something like Copilot doesn't mean you're giving up control. And this is really the fact that I want to emphasize, maybe for the ones and twos out there that have been apprehensive of adopting it because they feel like they're losing control or they're losing in touch with what makes programming fun, which is finding elegant solutions to complex problems. Really adopting Copilot just helps you enhance your craft, right? You're never going to be perfect at understanding every single package that could be used for different functionality if you're using JavaScript, right? You're never going to understand maybe the latest language. Some people do, and some people try to stay cutting edge with all that stuff. But Copilot allows you to level up and really talk with somebody who's in collaboration with you directly in your IDE, right? So not only is it going to be enhancing your craft, but it's going to be protecting your time and focusing on what really matters, which again is solving problems, being creative, and not getting lost in the weeds. All right. Enough of my high level spiel. I'll get off my pedestal there a little bit about talking about what's going on. Let's talk a little bit about where we've been, right? So going back again to that first phase of AI, we started with code completions back in 2022. And it was even before that. 2022 was really when we had that initial like beta and then an actual like enterprise product that we were selling. But this was what many people think of as like the classic Copilot experience, right? Auto completing your thoughts in real time, converting comments into code. And even back then, it did feel magical. But then there's always like, how can we get more? How can I provide more context? How can we work on bigger parts of the application? How can I actually chat with what's going on rather than just trying to sift through 10 different suggestions that it gave me? And in 2023, right at the same time as ChatGPT came out, we leveled it up with Chat Ask, right? Which is really bringing that conversational AI directly into the IDE. Now, you weren't just getting those simple suggestions. You could explain code, refactor, and ask why something worked or why it didn't. You could also debug or triage. It was very nice for being able to understand the crappy code that your coworker wrote, right? Never mind. Our coworkers never write crappy code, right? But you were no longer coding with just a tool, right? It wasn't just giving you 10 suggestions on how to write a method or a function. It's allowing you to code with a collaborator. And in 2024, we released chat edits. This may sound bad. I know this is a public facing webinar, but we hoped that it was a bigger splash than what it was. It was great for creating a walled off garden and editing multiple files simultaneously, but it wasn't great at understanding a larger level of context, right? And that necessarily wasn't a chat edit problem. A lot of times that was still a model context problem of how much information we could actually send back and ways that we built our tools since then. But the idea with chat edits is I can now upgrade Ask mode to work on 7, 8, 9, 10 files that I could then simultaneously make edits for. To be honest, this was the biggest improvement here that I saw was like if I was updating maybe like doing a refactoring project or I upgraded a dependency that has like some pretty changes or a function name change and I need to be able to make those changes. That's really where we saw a lot of value there. And now in 2025, this is where we've seen the biggest impact, right? This is closer, if I go back to that other slide, that's stage 2, which is what we call agent mode, right? I mean, you're hearing all sorts of things on X and in the news of being able to have vibe coding and being able to have an agent completely built an app for you. And there's companies that are built off of that, you know, like Lovable and some of these other companies out there that are doing it. Um, and really the goal or the idea with agent mode is it's no longer just assistive AI. It's no longer human input, human output. It's human input, and then I can build and reiterate off of that. It's becoming more what we're calling proactive, right? Your tools aren't waiting for you to ask. They're understanding, they're planning, and they're acting with context. So if you think about it, imagine an AI agent that can understand your project, identify problems, and then execute tasks on autonomously, like entirely on its own. Kudos to the first person who can tell me what MCP stands for in the chat. I gotta pop out my chat window. Try to look over there. Yeah, Walter got it. Model Context Protocol. Give me a thumbs up or a heart or whatever emoji if you've used MCP before. Yeah, I like the little emojis popping up. It's cool. Sweet. A lot of people used MCP, right? I love this slide because it explains it so simply. All it really is a USB-C for AI. There's nothing special or magical that's happening under the hood. It's strictly just this universal connector that allows us to integrate with our third-party tools. I read a study the other day, and I have to go back and find it, but it was talking about developer experience and context switching. I can't remember the firm number, but it was something along the lines like upwards of 10 tools on average that developers interact with every single day. And if you think about that, that makes sense between my source control management system. If I'm using a different CI tool or CD tooling, God forbid, I then have to pull information from my SIEM or my logging tools. And then I have all of these other things from Jira to my IDEs to Slack, all of these tools that I'm interacting with. And really the beautiful, and I'll show this today in the demonstration with a couple different examples. I'm going to try to keep it really simple, but I can pull in information without ever having to leave my IDE. So if we truly talk about, reducing context switching or, tool fatigue, MCP allows us to do that. And the one thing I want to call out is this is not a GitHub thing, right? This is this is MCP is to AI as like APIs were back to SaaS applications back in the early 2000s, right? When the internet was becoming a thing. And so I can drop this link in the chat, but there's all of these different servers that you can use from your cloud providers to Atlassian. Like there's tons of different ones here that all have different interactions or different ways that you can work with these things, right? And so the idea is to really extend the tools that you're using and not bucketing in to only being provided by just a few vendors. But go ahead and I drop that link in the chat. Go ahead and check it out. There's tons of different examples. I was honestly surprised at some of the tools that actually offered it versus the ones that don't. So let's go ahead and talk about a little bit about what's going on under the hood with Copilot, right? So won't spend too much time on this slide, but these are maybe for more of the ones, twos, and threes, and then the fours and fives that are curious. So we have what I'm showing here is autocomplete. Again, just super simple because it's easy to explain. But on the right-hand side, I have a runtime Go file. I have a function called average runtime in seconds, and I have a couple more information. It looks like I also have a Ruby file open and a time.js file to talk about maybe a large monorepo with different languages that I'm working on. But the idea here is I take the context and I send it directly into our proxy service. There's also a responsible AI filter and a couple other things that we do. But very simply, we have this proxy service that checks for a few things. It checks to make sure you have an active Copilot license. it looks to make sure that you're not doing anything unethical or you're trying to do like prompt hacking. It also checks the sentiment, meaning that if I have if I'm asking it a non-coding related question, GitHub Copilot is focused specifically on that, and so it may not help. My bad analogy that I always use for this is that if you ask it for Taylor Swift tour dates, it's probably not going to be able to help you, right? Sorry to all the Swifties out there. But if I ask it to help me scalp this or use the StubHub API so that I can scalp Taylor Swift tour tickets, and as part of that, I need the Taylor Swift tour dates, it can probably help with that. So just different ways of understanding a little bit about what's going on in the hood. And then for the managers out there, I think it was Rick, right? Having organizational policy that you can then enforce, restricting what models you use, um, allowing specific new features, maybe that are in a public preview, right? Or that are in a beta that haven't gone to GA yet. Allowing you to do things like public matching filter to block it where GitHub Copilot may be automatically taking code from its train and dating set from some of the LLMs and then providing that as verbatim response back. So just a few different things that we can enforce. The next thing is we send it to any of the LLMs. I use the OpenAI ones because those are the default models, but it's the same for the Claude models. It's going to be the same for the Gemini models. And we send it in its context. This is going to sound, I got critiqued on my verbiage here, but it's correct. So I'm going to continue to do it. But we keep that context in volatile storage until we get a suggestion back. The one thing to know after that is we do not retain, learn, or better the models off of any of the context sending in, right? We are not in the business of training models. We are in the business of building developer tools that optimize the way that we can interact with these models. And then when the suggestion is generated back, we are only collecting very minimal data on the user side to be able to actually provide and justify value. And then the last thing is we provide support among the most popular IDEs out there, right? So between Xcode, or we support Xcode, VS Code, all of the JetBrains IDEs. Seems like every time I look, there's a new one. So there's like, I don't know, 12 or 13 of those. Visual Studio, NeoVim, and Eclipse. I can't believe we support NeoVim, but we do. From there, what's new, right? So let's get into the meat and potatoes. Is Copilot Coding Agent. Copilot Coding Agent allows you to delegate tasks so that it can work autonomously as a contributor. You can also tag Copilot in a PR comment to have it make iterations on what it's already done. Maybe it gets 80% of the way there and you feel like it can get you to 90 or 95 before you start getting your hands dirty. So tagging Copilot directly in the pull request allows you to iterate with it and actually work with the code. So what's the process, or what does the flow look like? So you can assign work in Copilot from github.com, from the IDE, or GitHub Mobile. You can then track the agent's progress. So essentially what we're doing is when you assign an issue to Copilot, I will go ahead and create gosh, I can't think, a containerized environment where it can then run and do it. We're using GitHub hosted runners as of today. And then we use some of the advanced models. So we use the Claude models in order to do the analysis. This may change, but we feel like those are the best models. So I think we're using a combination of either 3.7 and 4, or maybe even 3.5 in there to do and actually implement implement the feature or improvement. And on the last item, we review the agent's work that you can then provide feedback and reiterate it with. Again, because I love to see the emojis, give me any emoji you want, any reaction, hearts, thumbs up if you've used Copilot Coding Agent before. Yeah, a couple people. Not as much as the MCP, but that's okay. Sweet. Oh, where'd my chat go? There it is. Awesome. And then just a few best practices before we jump into the demonstration itself. A couple things to highlight, right? So you can make sure that your your tasks are well scoped. I'll talk about different ways of improving the ways that you can get information in, right? So we have custom instructions, which is another bullet point down there, that you can automatically process or transmit in as context when you're providing these things in, right? You can also, again, use comments to iterate. So being able to work with the model if it doesn't get there. I mean, raise your hand if you've used AI and it doesn't do the right thing. And maybe it goes off on a completely different tangent and you have to try to reel it back in, right? So using comments to reiterate, I love thumbs up, and to be able to do those things, right? Choosing the right type of task. So just specifying more in the description, like, are you fixing bugs? Are you improving testing? Are you writing documentation? Is this a UI fix for accessibility? Whatever that may be. We also have Copilot setup or custom setup steps. So if your application is built in a very complex way, maybe you're using something like Bazel or a complex build system in order to do that, and all the Bazel guys are like, hey, Bazel's not complex. But you can pass in specific steps on how to do that, right? Or even to help it pre-install dependencies if you're using a private package registry so that the agent can hit the ground running and be able to validate that it's working. And then the last thing is use MCP servers, right? By default, with the Copilot coding agent, the GitHub and Playwright MCP servers are enabled, and we're working on expanding that. We'll talk more about that at Universe next month. Oh, and I'm clicking on that's embarrassing. I was clicking on Teams to go to next slide, not my slide. That's all right. And then Copilot Code Review. Who has used Copilot Code Review? Let's see the emojis. Nobody. One? Okay, we got a couple. Who has used Copilot Code Review and it said, I don't have any improvements on what you're doing, or provides nothing back? I have. The idea with Copilot Code Review is you can assign Copilot as a reviewer. So just as you can assign Copilot to an issue to get the work done, you can also assign it as a reviewer. The idea here is to be able to review based on your specific requirements or criteria. So going back to the previous best practices slide of, I can specify with my custom instructions the things that I want it to look for. So review guidance, the way that maybe specific coding frameworks or best practices that we use internally, right? Every customer that I've talked to, there's some sort of customization. They do something different or special in their development process. So being able to call those things out. The last thing I want to get on here is, talk about Copilot and say everything's butterflies and rainbows. There's a lot of improvements that we're making. We've seen the product in the last 6 months or 8 months. Like if you talk to me at the beginning of the year versus now, it's a completely different product, and there's so much value that you can get out of it. But a lot of times the frustration comes more so in it's not doing exactly what I want it to. And so this is where a lot of times the conversations I have with my customers are, have you done these things in preparation to get the right thing out, right? I always look at AI as a black box. If you put crap in, you're probably going to get crap out. Even during my demonstration, like when I was practicing this, I kept getting like little bit wrong answers. And then I'd go back and read my prompt and I'd be like, awesome, what were you asking it to do? And so again, having more clear and detailed ideas of the things that you want to go in, or even asking the model like, hey, provide this type of feedback and give me an MVP for it for a new feature improvement so that I can then reiterate and come back, right? And then the last thing that I like to cover is, here at GitHub and Microsoft, we focus on doing everything with a responsible AI mindset in mind, right? So we handle your data responsibly. Again, we're not in the business of retaining information or training these models. So we're going to handle your data responsibly. On the security side, for all of the proxies, for a lot of the things that are routing the communication to the LLMs, we're all going to use Azure infrastructure and encryption to do that. We also encrypt the data at rest and in transit. So we want to ensure that we have best practices there. And then the last item is we want to not only respect your IP, but respect the open source's IP as well. And so we have organizational policies in place, such as the enablement of public matching code filter, to help ensure that you're not going to be violated by a restrictive license, right? You don't want to end up like BMW, where their i3 software is now available on GitHub because they use the GPL license wrong, right? And so a couple different ways of having that. And then on top of the copyright piece, if you have, there's certain criteria to meet, but if you are a enterprise paying customer, Microsoft offers some indemnification coverage as well, meaning that if you get sued for a restriction of any of these licenses, you'll be backed by the Microsoft team. Cool. Enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and jump into the product. Sweet. So first things first, I always like to talk a little bit about like what my application is. We're not going to spend a ton of time coding. We're going to be talking more along we're going to let the model do that. But we're going to be talking more about configurations, tools that you can use, and then different tips and tricks for actually using GitHub Copilot. So first things first, you're looking at my MCP page. So these are going to be all the MCP servers I have. There's a couple different ways that you can configure it. And with VS Code, I'm using the file just because I feel like it's easier to manage. But essentially what's going on under the hood is for some of these, they're using a Docker image to route these over or route the processes to the third-party tools that I'm using. And just to show that this is a real application, I can open my simple browser. I think it's localhost 5137. And I have this application here, right? So this is a website. It's my OctoCat supply. We always love to use this for demos. So sorry if you've seen this a couple times, but I can, looks like I can add some items to my car. The photos kind of highlight and bubble up when I'm highlighting it. There's a weird, I don't know where these zeros are coming from, but that could be something that I could fix, right? But just to show that this is an actual running application, we have that here. And so the first thing that I would want to start with if I was a developer is I would want to say pull my Jira tickets using MCP and in a single line, sort them by priority. And so what it's going to do, so a few things, and it might take a second because when I first start this, it has to understand like what tool calls it's going to do, which is completely okay. And while we're waiting for that, there's a couple different things that I can highlight. So this is good. I can make this a little bigger. So because I have my Jira integration connected, I had to pass in a couple things like the Jira URL, username, API token. And so I already entered those things in. But what it's doing is it's just doing an API call for me, right? There's nothing special or fancy here. But all it's doing is it's doing an API call to get the information. And then rather than me trying to read a JSON payload, it's going to parse that for me. So if I look at the input that's going on, it's telling me who the assignee is, which is current user, which is my user, which I pass that in. And then it's looking for fields, the key, the summary, the priority, and status. And so then I'm going to go ahead and press allow. It'll go ahead and reach out. It'll automatically get the information back, which will then show, and then it'll be able to show in the chat each one of those tickets that are assigned to me. On top of that, I could filter by different models. So I like using the Claude models. I feel like they do some of the best jobs with implementation. The one thing to call out is there are multipliers with these models. So we have a guide, which I can get here. Let me pull it up on my other screen, of choosing the right model for your task, right? Or different model comparisons. And then let me go ahead and too many windows, drop us in chat. But there's a lot of different models that we offer. So being able to pull all that information in. And this will tell you, and I guess I could just even bring this on screen real quick. But the nice thing about this is it'll not only tell you what the model is, but the task that it's good at. And then additional capabilities are really key. So only certain models will have agent mode, which is able to do things like MCP, which is able to build functionality on your behalf. And some of them will have vision as well, which we'll actually use. But vision allows you to pass in images. So if I have like an ERD diagram or maybe a mock-up drawing from a PM of what feature I'm going to build out, these models will class or tell you which ones will be able to do that. But sweet. So I got some Jira tickets back. It looks like I have one that's a high priority assigned to me. I have a medium one. The high one is make some cart improvements. Very descriptive. The medium one is improve unit and API test case coverage. And then the last one is improve UI for mobile, for accessibility for mobile. These are all of my to-do status. So let's go ahead and say, give me all the information for the high priority ticket improving cart functionality. And so again, it's going to have to do another call. It'll pull in the information that it needs. And then it'll be able to give me that information back. I don't know why it's taking a little bit longer to think. That's okay. It's always when you're doing live demos. Just got to be a little bit more patient. But here's an example of the input that it got. So this was the information that it was sending via the API, and then this is the information that it got back. And then the nice thing is it puts it in an easier readable format here as it's pulling in all the information from the ticket, right? So priority status is high. It's assigned to me. It looks like the due date was October 1st. Ooh, I was supposed to do it on August 1, but it got extended. And then it just provides information on what we need to do. It looks like there's no cart page as of today. The nav bar lacks an icon, and then it pulls out not only implementation goals, but technical requirements and success criteria. And so what I'm first going to do, because we're going to show two different ways that I can solve this. So we're going to start everything in the IDE, and then we'll pivot to github.com. But let's say from the description on the Jira ticket, please create a GitHub issue on my repo. Give me the link to the issue to validate it's been created afterwards. And so this is an example of me taking the information from Jira, and maybe you don't use GitHub issues, but to quickly create a GitHub issue rather than having to copy and paste that or manually do it yourself, all within the IDE. So again, we have a GitHub MCP server. It's looking at my specific repository. Again, it has a terrible, very descriptive make card improvements. And then I even add some labels onto the issue. And so it's going to go off. It's going to do the information that it needs. And then it's going to give me a link back to the issue. Don't really need the summary, but let's go ahead and open this just to make sure it's real. And if you look, I opened this just now, and these are all of the information that I may need. The reason why I did this is later I'm going to assign this, and I guess we could even do this now, but I'm going to assign this to Copilot, assign to Copilot, to go ahead and get the work done. So we can go ahead and kick that off. And then we'll see which one takes longer. Sweet. And now let's say pull the information from the Jira ticket and ensure you use this. I think it's in docs, design, cart image. This cart image as context when creating the new functionality. We'll press enter. Hopefully it knows what Jira ticket. I just said the. Let's see. Sweet. So yeah, it has enough context from the chat to say the cart design image that I've provided. So it's going to get the information that it needs and then create. So it just created. So if you use Sonnet 4, this is cool. I didn't know that this was a model specific thing until I used 3.7 and I went back, but it'll actually create to-dos. So I can track how it's going through and adding or completing each one of these tasks while it's doing it, right? So while the AI is doing all the programming for me, rather than just kicking back and drinking my coffee, I'm going to show a couple different customization tactics and just some other tips and tricks when using GitHub Copilot. So first things first, because I have MCP enabled, I can click this little wrench and screwdriver here, and I can actually see the different tools that a Copilot chat will have access to do, right? You're going to see some of these tools are going to be extensions. So like I have Jupyter and Python installed, but because this isn't a Python application, I'm not running that. We also have the MCP servers. And so just to show some of the things that they can do is if I drop this down, there's tons of different tools here. The one thing to note is I had to disable some of these because there is a limit as of today for 128 tools. So we may expand that in the future, but just ensure like it won't be able to do any tool calls if you have more than 128. And Logan can keep me honest here, but what I heard the reasoning for that is 128 tools is the limit of our base model. And so that's why we keep it at 128. But again, the idea is to be able to look at all the different things that I have access to via the Jira or GitHub MCP integration. All right, enough MCP. I feel like I've been talking in acronyms this whole time. Let's talk about some of the customization things. So with GitHub Copilot, again, for a long time, there was a lot of feedback from my customers that was all about how can we customize what Copilot is doing. It does great, but we really wish that it could do this, or we really wish it had this context. Oh man, if only it understood this, it would be awesome. So the idea here is we provided a couple different ways of interacting and bettering the experience of Copilot for individuals and for businesses. And so first things first, we have things called chat modes, instructions, and then prompts. And so out of each of these, I can pass in different criteria. The way that I like to explain these very simply is chat modes, for example, is talking to a specific persona-based agent. So if I wanted to be able to, in this example, have a behavior-driven development agent that can take that persona to provide relevant responses back, that would be how I would do that. And to select chat modes, I would just go to agent, and I could select BDD once it's been generated. So if you have certain things that you're doing maybe over and over again, or maybe certain things that would be nice to be able to talk in that persona, you can create chat modes for that. Prompts are going to be more so of pre-built things that you can have it do, right? So for example, I have this demo cart page, which is doing the same thing. And the way that I would interact with this is a slash command. So I can do slash, and it's going to be demo cart, and then it's going to go ahead and run that prompt file. But again, the idea here is I can provide context what tools it has access to, what mode this is available in, and then provide overview of all the different things that I want to be able to implement. So we used to do it via this before we had MCP integration where we could pull information from issues, right? So we had this prompt that we can run. And then the last thing I want to highlight is Copilot custom instructions. So these instructions are going to be ways that you can specify at the repository level something that will always be passed in as context whenever you're completing anything. So for example, it explains what my application is. It has high-level architecture information on how we need to build it. So both the API and the front end. It even is telling like where the demo and infra docs are from. So from docs and from infra. You can also have, there's general review guidance on how we would do a review. So being able to look at things from having, it says prefer incremental, minimal diffs, preserve existing style and naming, right? And this isn't an end all be all. The idea is to just give you a few things to get the wheels turning of ways that you could specialize or specify what you want Copilot to do. This is also information that if you enable it on the GitHub side, on every code review, it'll automatically pull in your Copilot instructions as context to be able to better the Copilot code review experience as well. So we can look at that. So again, just to quickly summarize the different customizations, chat mode is going to be to talk to a customized agent with a specific persona. Prompts is going to be if there's something particular that you want it to do, like this handoff to Copilot coding agent is kind of cool. If I'm working on something, it can take information from the chat history, reduces any noise, and then writes a GitHub issue that I can then assign to the coding agent. Maybe I'm like 90% of the way there. Maybe I'm doing like optimization or something. And so I can run this prompt in order to do that. And then custom instructions is something that's going to be passed in for every attempt. And it looks like it's trying to build the front end. We don't need to do that because it's already running. It's already running. Let's see. The lint check. Cool. I think you got the point that it's already running. And it's cool that we have a skip step now. That I actually just did this demo a week ago and I couldn't skip it, so I just had to kill the session. But let's go ahead and look real fast. We're gonna open another simple browser just for fun because then I can show we don't need to go anywhere other than the IDE. Looks like we got a cart. That cart logo looks a little funny. That's all right. It's got a little undercarriage thing there. If I go to products, let's try to add some there. Sweet. The nav bar actually follows, which is really good. So we can see that we have a couple items added. Let's add some other ones. Awesome. Actually looks pretty good. So it has the image of the product name, the unit price. Let's take a look at that image. Pretty similar, right? Even the order summary. The design looks a little bit different. Maybe it's because I'm not in dark mode. A little bit different design, but that's okay. It looks like shipping is free. I know that there was, if it's over $200, that shipping should be free. Ooh, that's always giving free shipping. So we probably need to fix that. I think we had save 5 as a coupon code. Sweet discounts 5%. I think save 25 should also work. Nope. Looks like the coupon might be broken. So a few things to improve, right? But the idea here is without me having to really interact at all, it's able to build this functionality out for me entirely. Right, so being able to do that. Sweet, and we have that. And then what I can do now, which I should have had it check out a new branch, which is okay. But say that I wanted to review the code that I had. So a few things that I can do. I can go into the source control tab of Visual Studio Code, and then I can actually press this little button here. And it's going to go ahead and automatically review some of the uncommitted changes that I have. I can also press this little star icon and it'll give me a commit message, right? So improve shopping cart functionality, which is kind of cool, but just like little feature adds. And then we can actually review again some of the code changes that happen. So it'll actually go in and use Copilot code review on all of these without me having to ever leave the IDE. And so again, the idea here before I navigate, because I didn't realize I'm coming up on my 15-minute window, is that what the goal with this is rather than me having to context switch or go to the different tools or look at the Jira ticket or the GitHub issue or trying to do a code review or waiting until it's at the PR to do the code review, I can do all of this stuff locally without ever leaving. And the benefit to this is now when I upload my code, Hopefully the security checks or the linting or code quality issues, hopefully all of that stuff, there's going to be a lot less of them because I've handled it already in the IDE, right? And so it just allows you much more um, like it just gives you such a better integration and customer experience on how to manage this. And so I'm not going to go through all of these, but there's a few different ways I can look through all the comments. So it looks like it added a couple comments here. So I'm handling local storage access, which should be more specific error message. So it looks like I should change my error message from failed to load cart warning local storage to something like this. So yeah, we can go ahead and press apply and go next. Looks like any type defeats the purpose of TypeScript. We should use an item parameter. Sure, we can go ahead and add that. And if I didn't like it, I could always discard it and go next. Or I could even copy it in line chat if I want to make improvements like, oh yeah, this is really good, but maybe I should actually do it this way. So there's a lot of different ways you can interact. You can also give it thumbs up or thumbs down here. But just to summarize really quick in the IDE. So with GitHub Copilot Coding Agent, I was able to add or pull information from my Jira ticket, improve some of the functionality, and then hell, let's even document the changes we made. I mean, you did. We made on the cart functionality and update the Jira ticket to be marked as done. But the idea is we've automatically completed this, and now we're going to document the information without me really having to do anything of a lot of this stuff, right? And again, the idea, and I didn't want it to be bogged down with me doing a lot of hands-on coding, is just thinking of different ideas in which you can use GitHub Copilot to help better your life as a developer, right? I knew that there wasn't going to be a language that every single one of the folks on here would have access to. And everyone's like, well, do it in C++ or do it in C# or do it in JavaScript. And so that's why I really wanted to focus on the integration with Copilot and the tooling that Copilot has access to rather than so much of the code, right? So again, super simple example, but now we added a comment. It looks like it's transitioning the ticket to done status. I mean, we could even check to see if it did it. Let's see, looks like it's to do still. Oh, we got to actually do it. Let's see. Moment of truth. Sweet, it's done now. There's some comments. And AI Austin said, this is what we did. And you can always tell it's AI by all the emojis, right? Just like the LinkedIn posts. Sweet. So now navigating over to GitHub.com. So I showed how you could do everything in the IDE without ever context switching. So now let's say I wanted to do that same functionality change or improvement just within GitHub, right? So I have that card improvement. I've already assigned it to Copilot. If I go to the PRs, we should see that we have the card improvements. It looks like it's already completed. I'm going to request a Copilot reviewer. So it looks like I went through and looked at the implementation checklist. If I wanted to see the session on where it's at, it might still be working. Yeah, it's still working because it hasn't updated anything. But it's actually going at it and making all, and it looks like it kind of got stuck on some of the, no, it updated the product page and the navigation. So it's just working through it, right? But the nice thing about Copilot Coding Agent is it allows you to delegate the work, and then I can check out that branch that it is working on, and then go from that 80 or 90% to completing the task and then updating it, right? Another example is I can interact with Copilot. So here's an example of I have improve API test case coverage to 82% or higher. So I pulled in information from a ticket. It's below the 85% target, so I don't know where it's getting 82% from. But if I scroll down, we can see that I made a couple changes. And then I was like, hey, you need to improve it to 85% or higher. Because if I look here at one of these edits, I think it was this one, it was at 59% or 30%, right? That's not my 85%. So I had to try again. And let's see where we ended up. Wow, it's even worse. 19%, far below the 85% target. So maybe I need to have it reiterate or be more specific. Okay, so it just hasn't updated that comment. But tester passing 100 out of 122, 82% pass rate. Coverage might not be great. But the idea is to allow you to reiterate with Copilot and help work on these specific things. There's other ways that we're going to be working with or integrating AI alongside some of our other products. So not only are you going to see it in the PR with code review, not only are you going to see it with software engineering agent, we are also adding security issues have automatic fixes. So here's an example of like a code injection. It looks like in an actions file. And so I can have Copilot automatically generate a fix if I have a GitHub Advanced Security license to run out, find the fix, and then provide the fix for me directly here. We also have ways that you can assign these fixes. So we see a relatively high fix rate, but I can also validate that that's not going to cause any breaking changes by using the GitHub agent mode. So if I navigate to a different repo real quick, I just want to show this really fast, and then we can jump into Q&A. Is if I have what's called a campaign, I can see which one of these will have autofix available. And I can even click these and assign them directly from this dashboard to Copilot. So it truly means if I find these alerts, that you're going to be able to fix them, right? So if found means fixed, being able to catch these specific things. Sweet. I know that was kind of fast just because I ran out of time. But then going back to the presentation, really where we're going with all of this, right? And what are we going to see and what are we going to talk about more so at Universe? The idea is soon one developer will be working with a whole bunch of different agents, right? Maybe three, right? You have a coding agent, a code review agent, a security agent. And over time, those agents will be able to interact with each other. And that's really where that stage 4 is, right? Right now, we're at a point where a human can delegate specific or easy tasks to agents, and then there's a little reiteration. Stage 3, we're going to start having hybrid teams. Or maybe you have like an SRE agent or an SWE agent or a PM agent or whatever other acronym you can think of. And then those are going to be interacting with each other and then providing feedback back to people, right? But the one thing I want to leave you guys with is being a developer has never been about how fast we can type code, right? That's just a vanity metric. I truly don't love the metric of lines of code generated. I know that there's a lot of correlations that you can have with time saved, but you can do something with, 20 lines of code that you could do the same thing with 100 lines of code, right? And maybe the 100 lines of code is more scalable and or maybe the 20 lines of code is even better, right? But being a developer first and foremost has always been about our ideas, and the code really is what just creates them, right? It's the process of taking a big complex problem, breaking it down into smaller pieces, right? Like I always pictured programming like Lego pieces, right? You're able to take these small pieces and assemble them into something real. And that's the job of the developer. And the idea with Copilot is now you have a superpower to do just that, right? With agents. And the last thing I want to leave with is AI is not here to take your job away. AI is here to improve how much you can do and hopefully help you accomplish more. All right. Enough of that. We can answer questions. Austin, you are 2 minutes late. I know. I'm sorry. I tried to rush through the last part of it, but call to action. Sign up for Universe. There are a lot of things coming that I couldn't talk about today that we will be releasing next month, right? There's going to be updates on GitHub Spark. There's going to be updates on, just feature improvements with Copilot. We're also talking about improvements on the gas products, actions. Like there's going to be tons of releases in all the different product categories that GitHub offers. The next thing is if you're not already, you can get started with GitHub Copilot for Business, right? Very easy to enable. The billing is going to be tied back to the organization. If you're a Microsoft customer, you can bill back to an Azure sub ID. If you're not, you can either do invoiced or bill directly to a credit card. And then I didn't show this yet, but there's some really cool examples that we just shipped on this repository called Awesome Copilot, can't read. That talks a lot about those instructions, prompts, and other configurations that you can use with GitHub Copilot. The idea is to help you get more out of it. Like one that I was reading the other day, and I think it's in chat modes, is like an Azure DevOps. I don't know, we'll do principal architect. But say that I wanted to chat with a principal architect that uses the Azure well architected framework, which is funny. WAF has multiple meanings, I guess, and just help like talk about this, right? This is just one example. There's tons of these. And not only is this contributed by GitHub, there's a lot of open source maintainers as well from some of the largest companies in the world that are providing back here. So, but check out this. This will provide examples of ways that you can use some of these instructions and prompts where you're like, yeah, that would be a cool idea. Or maybe we should see if this helps with the better review guidelines, things like that. And then the last call to action is if you sign up for GitHub Copilot, give Copilot Coding Agent a run, right? See if it can do something. The things where I see it's best at is usually in feature improvement. So like API test case coverage. I don't know where mine went off the rail, but that's a very good ask of helping Copilot Coding Agent build that. The thing that I would say not struggles with, but where people are more particular in what it does is more on the creativity side. So front end work, like the cart functionality, it's always funny to go back and look. The cart will look funny or be in a weird location, very not user friendly, but it doesn't care because it's trying to complete the task, right? So yeah, go sign up for Universe. Check out GitHub Copilot. Hopefully Logan dropped a couple of these in the chat. And then let's go ahead and go to Q&A. Oh, no.
Yeah, cool. And I have dropped all links in the chat, including Awesome Copilot.
You're the best.
We have 2 questions for you to answer before we just open it up to the floor previously. First one is, what are your feelings on LLM on the command line? Is there a benefit to these outside of the integration with the IDE?
Yes. So on the command line piece, I think that there's a lot of benefits because you can essentially have the agents do things on your behalf that you can then run on your machine, and it's not like locking up your IDE. Same thing with the Copilot coding agent. Is we have the ability to automatically assign it into issues, and so you're not waiting or wasting compute. Um, this is something that I would say wait for Universe. I'm not going to say more, but we may be talking more a little bit about what we're doing on that front. So hopefully something to get you guys excited about. But I do think that there's a lot of value in the CLI, just different use cases depending on what you're using it for. Great question.
Thank you for that. I hope that answered the question. The second one is just a quick one. If you can go back to your IDE, is where were you able to see the Copilot review locally?
Yeah, good question. So there's a few different ways of doing it. I can run it in the command palette. So if I do Command Shift P, I think that there's like review. So I can do a Copilot review here. It'll do the same thing. I did it the ClickOpsy way, where if you go into the source control, you can click this little button here, and it'll say code review uncommitted changes. So really, really nice and easy way of automatically reviewing some of the files that you've changed. Because this code review, you can specify, P, view, where is it? Copilot? It's Copilot review. And I can specify like specific code ranges that I want to do for files. So if I just wanted to review like one off, I'm just going to click on this Atlassian one, for example. I could have it review that. So if you're working on something, it's funny that actually has comments. But yeah, if you wanted to review like one off, you can do that. If you wanted to review like all of your uncommitted changes, do it this way. Great question.
Awesome. Those were the 2 that I had historically. If there was something, because the chat can get quite chaotic, that you felt I had missed or hadn't picked up for, feel free to put it in again. We'll definitely get to it. But yeah, Austin, if you just want to open up the chat window instead of me reading these at you, I'll let you go ahead and start tackling them.
And I'd love Logan's a big DevOps guy, so I would love to have his feedback on some of these too. So I might put him on the spot. So Dan asks, is there a difference in terms of Copilot awareness and efficiency between a long Copilot instructions file versus a smaller one that has references to other markdown files in the same directory? I don't think that there's a difference, but I've seen that. We also have other instructions files that are coming out. I think like name is one of them. And there's a couple other ones that you can pass in. I don't personally know if there's any difference between doing it one way versus the other. Logan, what's your feedback there?
Yeah, I'd say the split is more for the human readability of it than the Copilot's readability of it. So if you feel like you and your user and your team likes having like your architecture and so forth in a different and markdown instead of a large list, that's definitely a benefit too.
I think that's a great call out, right? Just here, like I think a lot of this stuff is have AI help us with the human readability piece, right? That's like a one big thing of why MCP is so cool. Is like I can always get that information with the API and the terminal, but then what do I actually do with it? So I think having the AI help is really important. So Boris Sass is a good MVP. I don't know. Depends on the model you ask. Depends on who you ask if it's good or not, right? It's very subjective. I've heard some pretty good things, but I feel like product managers are like, no, it's not. Only I'm good at MVP. So I think you have different ways of doing that. But how to get Copilot review option for Visual Studio. So I'll drop this in the chat. Code review. There's this link will show you all of the different. I can bring this on screen, but this doc will show you all the different IDs. I love it. JetBrains IDs, mobile, Visual Studio, right? Visual Studio Code. It'll even show some of the different examples, so selections of code, the hotkey that I did for my Mac, and then reviewing the uncommitted changes. And then it even talks about how to work with some of the suggestions provided. But great
I'll
question.
jump in there quick just to add that
Yeah,
make sure that your organization's policies allow for these things as well. So there
great.
might be some things that you need to talk to your administrators to turn on.
Yeah, great call out. And the way that they do that is just at the org level settings, and we can send information over there too. Dan said he has like a Vision MD file that has overall project vision. Yeah, I mean, however you want to reference them. There's a lot of logic and optimization that we've done of like sending the context over to the model that it needs in order to have a relevant response back. And we're still even improving that. I think we had a blog post yesterday where we improved our code searching engine for Copilot and even like the way, and there was like some pretty significant improvements. I'll have to find the post. But we're constantly, again, optimizing the way that Copilot can do some of these things. So here's an example. I think it's for embedded model for VS Code that has some improvements, but there's a good blog post. R asks, for the capability to find security vulnerabilities and have Copilot fix them, is there a separate license for that capability? So yes, so we offer GitHub Advanced Security as a separate license. It's charged per active committer. My recommendation is it is completely free on public GitHub repositories. So if you have GitHub repositories, great place to test it out. The tool that we have for our SAST scanner is called CodeQL. It has some of the lowest false positives, highest validity rates on the market when comparison to some of the larger vendors out there. Um, but there are like low-hanging fruit where I've seen Copilot code review, like maybe a very obvious SQL injection where it'll actually fix it. So I would say like high level, the model can do some pretty easy things, but if you want in-depth analysis that's going to be higher validity, then definitely check out GitHub Advanced Security. So great question. Can Copilot code review based on, and I can get this out of the way. Can we base on a company-based framework to ensure the developer has used that framework? Can we give it a baseline framework to work from? Um, the answer is all of that as of today has to be done as code. So like if I go into any of my repositories and if I go into my settings here, and then if I go to Copilot code review, I'm going to be able to specify that to use the custom instructions. So whatever I can have within that custom instructions file, I can do that. I can also have rule sets. So if I wanted to specify this for all of my PR reviews on how we're targeting the default branch, I can do that using rule sets. So I can create a rule set that we could then automatically do. So this one created a Copilot review for default branch so that I can scale this out across all of my repositories. There's also configurations at the org level that you can do. So if you think Copilot instructions is going to be at the repo level, I can also specify this at the org level. So again, it's going to be, I think it's under custom instructions, where I can specify specific things that I wanted to do. So frameworks, this is more limited to specific characters, but I can call out very specific levels. The recommendation there is I would always keep the descriptions pretty high level when you're doing the org level, and then at the repository level, drill into more specifics. Um, as far as giving it a baseline, I think as long as you can explain what that baseline is and be able to compare that, like that should work. Logan, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think one call out that I would do is definitely use the custom instructions. I'd even push
Good.
to use the custom instructions in the repository. And the big reason for that is that it's nice to have a code review that tells you, hey, you should be using this. But why not just start by saying when the code is being generated, use the framework, right? So that the developer hasn't gone and created this whole thing with the wrong framework and then they're only catching it at review time. So let's say I want to use Cypress for my end-to-end tests in JavaScript. We should just define that in the custom instructions, whether at the organization or code guidelines that we share throughout our repositories, so that when it's getting generated, we have that, and then we can also make that available for the review as well. So almost catch it earlier, really.
Yeah, great call, Logan. Last question, just because we're about to run out on time. Before I answer the last question, I just want to say again, call to action. Sign up for Universe. There's so many releases. And if you're in SF, maybe look at grabbing a ticket, see if you can get expense it through the company, right? Get started with Copilot. I think the best way of testing these things out is just to use it for yourself to see all the things and improvements that it can do. And then yeah, as far as the last question, and I just want to say thank you. So we had 113 people. We have 110 right now. I think the peak was like 125. Having 90% of you guys stick to the end. Hopefully I was entertaining. Hopefully you learned a little bit more about GitHub Copilot. And really the goal with all this is if you can leave with one thing, and that's I could use Copilot for this, then this was a success, right? So being able to hammer that out. But again, thanks everybody. Thank you, Logan, for the help. But Lee, last question. Is there a limit? And I think this is a good one. Is there a limit to how long Copilot will run on a single task? The answer is yes. There is also like if you saw, you can change. I think there's some settings, Logan, can you be honest here, on how long it'll say, like we've been iterating for a long time. Do you want to continue? So there's some ways that you can configure that. The last thing is, have you found that long running tasks tend to lead to more hallucinations? The issue, just what Logan called out, the chat history is really the problem. And then it'll kind of go down that rabbit hole of whatever that may be. So I think not just letting it run and doing its thing, but monitoring the changes that it's actually doing. And then again, better prompt structure going in, back to my analogy, black box, crap in is crap out. Being more specific is going to reduce hallucinations overall. So I think we've seen as the models improve that hallucinations have gone down significantly because the context window is higher. But again, I'm not going to say that everything's perfect. So, but and Logan had a great answer. All right. Well, thank you everybody for the time. I hope you have a fantastic Thursday and a great weekend, and appreciate you stopping by.
Just folks, have a great rest of your day.
See ya.